Deep inside an American battleship, a sailor crawls through a passage so narrow his shoulders scrape both walls. He cannot turn around. Above him, sealed behind layers of armor steel, sit four 16-inch guns capable of throwing a shell weighing 2,700 pounds over 24 miles. Below him, in rooms most civilians have never seen, are spaces that define naval warfare for half a century. The four Iowa-class battleships were 270 meters long. They displaced 58,000 tons, fully loaded. They carried a crew of nearly 2,700 men, and they were the largest, fastest, and most heavily armored warships the United States Navy ever put to sea. The world remembers their gun turrets and their gray hulls. What the world has never seen are the places hidden inside them. The decks behind sealed hatches. The compartments closed for decades. That changes right now. What do you think is the most surprising thing hidden inside a battleship? Drop your answer in the comments below. Most people have seen a battleship in a photograph or a film, the famous silhouette. The teak deck of the USS Missouri, where Japan signed its surrender on September 2, 1945, ending the Second World War. The massive gun turrets pointed toward the horizon, the gray paint, the flag. That is what the world remembers. But the real story of these ships is sealed inside the hull, behind doors that were locked when the ships were decommissioned and have stayed locked ever since. Today, all four Iowa-class battleships, the Iowa, the New Jersey, the Missouri, and the Wisconsin, exist as floating museums. Visitors walk the upper decks. They see the guns. They take photographs on the same surrender deck where General MacArthur stood. But below them, in the parts of the ship that the public is not allowed to enter, the most extraordinary places remain exactly as they were. 5 of them stand out. We are counting them down, from number 5 to number 1. Several decks below the waterline, deep inside the armored heart of the ship, sit the powder magazines. These are the storage rooms that fed the main guns. Each shot from one of the 16-inch guns required 6 silk bags of smokeless powder, each weighing 110 pounds. Stacked together, the magazines held hundreds of tons of propellant at any given time. Enough explosive material to level a city block. The temperature inside these rooms was controlled to within a few degrees. The walls were lined with materials designed to prevent any spark. The sailors who worked in them wore special clothing that did not generate static electricity, and they were forbidden from carrying anything metal. No watches, no belt buckles, no pens. A single mistake could have ended the ship. This was not an exaggerated concern. In November 1941, the British battleship HMS Barham was struck by torpedoes that detonated her magazines. She rolled over and sank in under 4 minutes. 862 men died. American battleship designers studied that disaster carefully. The magazines on the Iowa-class ships were built with double bulkheads, flood valves that could fill the rooms with seawater in seconds, and reinforced steel ceilings that could redirect an internal blast upward through the deck rather than outward through the hull. The men who worked in these magazines knew exactly what they were standing on. They did their jobs anyway. Rising from the middle of the bridge, hidden in plain sight, is a vertical steel cylinder that most visitors walk past without realizing what it is. This is the conning tower. From the outside, it looks like part of the superstructure. In reality, it is a separate fortress within the ship, protected by Class B armor, 17.3 inches thick, roughly 439 millimeters of solid steel on every side. To put that in perspective, the main battle armor on most World War II tanks was less than 4 inches thick. The conning tower walls were over 4 times as thick as that. From inside this cylinder, through narrow viewing slits cut into the steel, the captain could continue commanding the ship even if the rest of the bridge was destroyed. A communications tube with walls 16 inches thick ran down from the conning tower into the armored citadel below, carrying every order and every signal, protected by armor the entire way. On the lead ship, the USS Iowa, the conning tower had 3 levels. On the other 3 ships, the New Jersey, the Missouri, and the Wisconsin, only 2 levels remained. The flag level was deleted to save weight. And here's the strange part. Despite the engineering effort and the enormous cost, most captains never used it. The visibility through those narrow slits was too limited. The space was too cramped. In combat, American battleship commanders almost always stayed on the open bridge, exposed to enemy fire, because they needed to see. The most heavily armored command post ever built into a warship was in practice almost always empty. Before we go any deeper, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit subscribe right now and let us keep going. Below the waterline, sealed inside the armored citadel, is a room that almost no civilian has ever entered. This is the main battery plotting room. From the outside, it looks like a steel chamber filled with cabinets and wiring. From the inside, it was the brain of the battleship. The room housed the Mark 8 Rangekeeper, an electromechanical analog computer built before the digital age. It received information from the directors above, from the fire control radar, from the ship's gyro compass, from the wind sensors, and from a device called the stable vertical that tracked the rolling of the ship. With that information, the Mark 8 calculated where to aim a 16-inch shell that would travel through the air for nearly a full minute before hitting its target. The accuracy was remarkable for its era. On February 16, 1944, the USS Iowa and the USS New Jersey engaged the Japanese destroyer Milwaukee at a range of 35,700 yards over 20 miles away. Both battleships straddled the target with their opening salvos. It remains the longest range straddle ever recorded by a battleship in combat. There were no microchips in that plotting room, no software, just gears, cams, levers, and the men who knew how to operate them. The Mark 8 was still in service in the 1980s when the 4 Iowa-class ships were reactivated by President Reagan. Did you know a mechanical computer was running the most powerful naval guns on the planet well into the era of personal computers? Yes or no? Tell us below. Stretching for hundreds of feet down the length of the hull, far below the living quarters and the gun decks, are 4 long, narrow passages known as the shaft alleys. Inside them turn the 4 propeller shafts that drove the ship. Each shaft connected an engine room to one of the 4 screws at the stern. From starboard to port, the shafts measured 340 feet, 243 feet, 179 feet, and 277 feet long. At full speed, they rotated at up to 225 revolutions per minute. The 4 shafts together delivered 212,000 horsepower, enough to push 58,000 tons of steel through the ocean at over 33 knots. To put that in perspective, that made the Iowa class the fastest battleships ever built. Faster than the German Bismarck, faster than the Japanese Yamato, which displaced over 72,000 tons fully loaded. The shaft alleys are also some of the most hostile working environments inside the ship. They are hot, they are loud, they are so narrow in places that sailors had to crawl through on hands and knees to inspect for vibration or alignment problems. A single misaligned shaft spinning at full speed could have torn through the hull. The sailors assigned to these spaces, known across the Navy as snipes, often worked entire watches without seeing another person. For weeks at a time during long deployments, they did not see daylight at all. The ship moved because of them, but few outside the engineering crew ever knew their names. Directly beneath each 16-inch gun turret sits a structure that most museum visitors never see. The turret is not just the visible armored housing on the upper deck. It is a vertical column that extends 4 or 5 decks down into the hull, with handling rooms stacked at each level. This is where projectiles and powder bags were moved from the magazines below and loaded into the elevator hoists that fed the guns above. On the Iowa-class battleships, Turret 2 extended 5 decks down. The lower handling rooms were so tight that sailors worked shoulder to shoulder while moving objects weighing more than 1,000 pounds at a time. Each turret required between 85 and 110 men to operate during combat. The original cost of a single turret in the early 1940s was $1.4 million, and that figure did not include the guns themselves. On April 19, 1989, in the Caribbean Sea, roughly 260 nautical miles northeast of Puerto Rico, the USS Iowa was conducting a live fire exercise. At approximately 9:53 in the morning, the center gun of Turret 2 detonated before it could fire. The blast killed 47 sailors. This tragedy shocked the fleet and the nation. 2 investigations followed. The Navy concluded that the explosion was a deliberate act by one of the gun crew. A second review, conducted by the Government Accountability Office with technical support from Sandia National Laboratories, pointed instead to an accidental cause: the over-ramming of powder bags. The 2 reports contradicted each other. The USS Iowa was decommissioned in October of 1990. 1 year later, in October of 1991, the Chief of Naval Operations issued a formal apology for the original investigation. The exact cause has never been officially unresolved. Today, the Iowa rests at the Port of Los Angeles as a museum ship. Visitors can walk her decks and stand at the base of Turret 2. The turret itself is sealed. Every year on the 19th of April, the 47 names are read aloud. 5 hidden places. Powder magazines lined with materials that could not produce a spark. A 17.3-inch armored cylinder that captains preferred not to use. An analog computer that could place a 16-inch shell on a target over 20 miles away. Shafts running hundreds of feet through the hull, turning at 225 revolutions per minute. And a sealed turret that remembers 47 men. All of them are inside ships that no longer sail. The 4 Iowa-class battleships were the last battleships built by the United States Navy. No nation has built another since. No nation has plans to. The technology they represented, heavy armor, massive guns, ships designed to absorb hits rather than avoid them, was made obsolete by aircraft, missiles, and submarines. The sailors who served on them are now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Some of the men who manned the turrets, walked the shaft alleys, and stood watch in the plotting rooms are still alive. They visit the museums. They volunteer as guides. They are the last living link to a class of warship that ruled the surface of the ocean for half a century. The USS Iowa now rests in Los Angeles. The New Jersey sits in Camden. The Wisconsin is in Norfolk. The Missouri remains at Pearl Harbor, exactly where the war that defined her began. Here is the final question. When the last sailor who served on these ships is gone, what do you think should happen to them? Tell us in the comments. If this video gave you a new respect for what these ships were and for the people who served on them, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss what we cover next. We will see you in the next one.